Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed lunch. We're going to begin the first panel show of the afternoon. Most of us, of course, here today, many, if not most, are here with our smartphones and our laptops. And most of us, if not all of us, are now deeply connected as individuals to the digital age, at home or in the workplace, or both. It's a new trend in our urban age is that our cities are also increasingly part of the digital age. Some are calling it digital infrastructure, just as the roads and rail and telephone wires once connect us. Digital technologies and cloud technologies that connect us as never before are a crucial part of the modern metropolis. And all of this is creating huge amounts of data that can be changed and will change how government works. Our next panel looks at this new trend, what some call cloud city. But what exactly are the benefits of digital infrastructure, digital systems for today's cities? Where are we at and where are we going? We have an excellent panel to talk about it. Let me introduce them now. Dragan Narandzic, who's Chief Technology Officer for Ericsson Canada. Nice to see you, sir. Trish Garner, Manager of Open Data for City of Toronto. Hi, Trish. From the Ford Motor Company, Michael Cavaretta, Data Science Leader. I saw Ford there, my heart went up. And finally, pinch hitting, and he's only got one name that I've got, and he's without a cape, and his name is Zenon. Principal with WZMH Architects. So nice. Yeah, all I got is Zenon.
That's all you need.
That's all I need. There's a man of confidence. And we have a great chair, and someone you would know. She was the former urban affairs writer for the Globe and Mail. She is now senior strategist and chief speechwriter in the office of Ontario's new premier. Please welcome Siri Agrell. Hey, Siri. Nice to see you.
Don't tell my boss I'm here.
She said, don't tell my boss I'm here.
It snuck out.
It's all yours,
Okay.
ma'am.
Can everybody hear us? I don't feel like my mic's on. So it's really great to be here. I used to write about cities for the Globe and Mail, and while I do not miss being a reporter at all, I do miss thinking about this kind of thing and talking about cities and hearing about the new things that are happening around the world. So it's great to be a part of this and with this panel. When I was reporting and also being just a citizen of Toronto, I feel like there are things that come up every day where I say this is a situation that could be solved with better information, from whether we need bike lanes to how we handle our congestion to how our buildings are designed. It seems like the more data we can share, the more we can play around with things, the more solutions we can find. So I was hoping we could just start. We're going to talk a little bit and then I'll throw it open to you guys if you have questions. But I was hoping you guys to talk a little bit about, I think people are starting to catch on to it, but I feel like people don't understand how important this is going to be going forward and how I really think this will separate, the cities of the future, who is going to sort of do well and who's going to expand. So I was hoping you guys could just talk a little bit about what you think digital infrastructure means right now and how it will play out for different urban centers in the next few years. You want to kick it off?
Okay, sure. I mean, let me just give you maybe a bit of a 2-second background in terms of what I do and what our firm does, because it is kind of directly and indirectly related to today's topic. But we're an architectural firm, and in the last 10 years, we've been designing a lot of data centers, and these are basically buildings that you probably don't even know where they are because of the security level of these buildings. But they contain basically hundreds and hundreds of server cabinets that basically store data, and all of this data is interconnected through fiber connections that go underground, above wire, along railway tracks, throughout Canada, the US, go under the oceans to connect to Europe and the rest of the world. And the clients that we design these data centers for are everybody from the banks, insurance companies, to the governments, the municipalities, everybody, telecom companies, private sector, etc. So in terms of what we're seeing in terms of a trend or the next generation in terms of data and technology within city centers or within cities is all about building the proper infrastructure to house all of this data to allow all the different services that are being provided by government agencies and all of these companies I mentioned, like the banks, to store the data and to effectively deliver it and secure it properly so that we could all function on a day-to-day basis. For example, we did a very large data center just west of Toronto for the province of Ontario. It was just recently finished in the last year or so. And when we were designing this data center, one of the issues that came up by the client was the fact that they currently have a very old facility in the city of Toronto that the building, the roof was leaking, and the concerns are things like if the data isn't stored properly, if it isn't transferred properly, things like emergency situations like the OPP, for example, when an OPP officer pulls over somebody along the highway and they're doing a check on the person, if they're not getting the right data at the right time frame, there could be a problem. So the importance of having this data in secure facilities, having access to it right away, makes a big difference of life or death in some certain. So we're seeing this huge push these days by various clients to basically build this infrastructure, secure infrastructure, redundant infrastructure, to allow them to properly conduct business and to move the business in a kind of more forward, positive direction.
And you're one of these businesses, I would imagine. Is this something that Ford is working on?
Yeah, definitely. So I think from our perspective, the digital infrastructure of the company is different from the digital infrastructure that you're talking about from the city perspective. Mm-hmm. And one of the areas that we're really interested in is the open data movement, open government movement. We think there's a lot of opportunities there to basically crowdsource some of the problems and be able to help cities open up and provide greater collaboration with the people who live there.
By feeding them information through our cars?
That's definitely one perspective, and that's one thing that we really have our eyes on. I think really one of the pieces why I'm here is to take a look at those collaboration opportunities. San Francisco, Toronto, Chicago, a lot of places have open data movements where they're kind of releasing some of the internal data sets to provide greater accountability, but also enhance collaboration. Mm-hmm. And those are real positives for the city. I think a lot of times those have helped a lot of companies releasing data sets. Nike's done a great job doing some things in that area. And so, we're really definitely big backers of that movement.
And Trish, you're spearheading the open data movement for the city, is that right?
I'm one of a team of people who are advocating inside and outside for open data. We do a lot of work with advocacy groups out in the community, mostly people who develop apps and who want to make Toronto a better place to live. And it's always amazing me how many people out there just want their city to be a better place and are willing to put their time into doing that. But we meet with them wherever, however, and often it's in buildings that aren't as connected as they would like them to be. So the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure is definitely lacking. They want to be connected, they want that social engagement, they want to be talking with people that aren't present physically while they're building apps. So it's something that we're always getting lobbied for, is to have Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi at City Hall.
Mm-hmm. Are you going to do that?
Yeah. I understand we are.
And we'll move on. And so Ericsson obviously is playing a big role in this too. Are you one of the companies that's helping cities sort of get up to speed on their digital infrastructure?
Absolutely. Ericsson, being the world's largest infrastructure vendor for telecommunications industry, has a very strong presence in Canada. And if you're using mobile devices, most of mobile devices in Canada are connected to Ericsson infrastructure. Looking into the future, at Ericsson, we believe that everything that needs connectivity will be connected. Everything that has microprocessor will be connected. We believe that by year 2020, there will be more than 50 billion connected devices worldwide. And in order to connect them, we have to also think, how are we going to leverage these devices to optimize information that is available to us, and how to effectively use that information to optimize other industries that will have impact on that. So we will put infrastructure in those data centers that Xenon designed. We will connect the cars, and we will open information for efficient use that city has, and we will make cities more productive.
You all make it sound, very idyllic, and that this will all be great for humanity. Is there any sort of downside? Like, obviously, the upside of big data is that we know more than ever about the way we're behaving, the way our cities work. But then there's also, an ownership issue. Big data can be used to sell people products for all kinds of different things. Are we going to get into a scenario where we have Ericsson cities and Ford cities and IBM cities? Is there any? What's the corporate interest in doing this, I guess?
I'm going to pass on that.
What I would say is that the city is very diversified entity with lots of various aspects. What is very important is that these various communication devices that generate data and that can be impacted by that data. So it's two-way communication. One is that actually provides information towards the rest of the world, and it receives information and does something with that information. Both aspects are very important. That data has to be protected using appropriate privacy policies that are well established and well understood. What we need to do is to really think, how are we going to set our strategy going forward so that we can use all of these connected either devices, such as cars, or city infrastructure, such as maybe transit information, road information about parking, and many other things. How can we actually effectively use that in a standardized way to make it available to citizens, but also available to industries who can actually better optimize their business and make it more productive?
Zenon, when you go in, do you find that companies have those strategies, or are they asking you, like, we need to do something, help us?
Actually, I wanted to just comment on that. I mean, pretty speaking from kind of a building's perspective in terms of designing these facilities, all of this data that's going into these facilities, there's always this issue of security. And so depending upon our client, for example, the province or police agencies, even banks, I mean, they have, different levels of security for the type of data they actually store. And, in some of these facilities, and keep in mind, these facilities are very, very secure facilities. They're unmarked buildings. You don't know where they exist. Most people don't know where they exist. But in terms of the server cabinets that are located within these actual data centers, the stuff that's kind of at the highest level of security, they're kind of located in cages that are in cages that are in cages. And to get into these, server cabinets, to access the information there in terms of, the actual hard disk space and stuff like that, nobody could just walk in. In fact, some of them, work that we do for certain government agencies, you need at least two people to enter that cage and two people to exit that cage, or you can get in or get out. So there is a very high level of security put in place into these facilities that store this data that is, obviously at a very high level of security.
And you feel like people have a plan of we're setting this up because we want to do this and this and this. Like, my experience from government, you get in there and you sort of expect them to know what they're doing to a certain extent, and then you realize that it's courier pigeons and fax machines. I've been surprised at how analog governments can still be. Do you find that with the city? Like, do you feel like we're where we need to be in terms of doing this? Are cities behind? Are companies behind?
Are you talking in terms of the city's approach to?
Your approach and your use of this data, your ability to actually access this stuff. Like, I know it's problematic that to even input all of your records, right? You don't have everything digitally now.
No, that's a huge challenge. As you know, we amalgamated 10 plus years ago, and we still have legacy systems we're working with. Mm-hmm. So it is a huge challenge. We're trying to go from day forward with opening up data, and we're not fussy. We just take whatever divisions can give us. We have 40 plus divisions in the city. Each of those divisions have sections and units and program areas. So you can imagine that how much data there is and how much there is that we don't even know about and that other divisions don't know about. So we're grappling with that first and foremost. But yes, we do have significant challenges when it comes to how archaic some of the systems are. Having said that, we're always moving forward, and we're looking at in the cloud solutions.
Yeah. I just wanted to comment actually this whole issue of the city and the whole amalgamation and access to information. again, we're architects and we do a lot of work, across cities, across Canada, North America, worldwide. And some cities are very well, call it user-friendly in terms of access to online information, in terms of, zoning and bylaws and stuff. It's very user-friendly. You can find things very quickly, click buttons and stuff. I think the city of Toronto is trying to reach that level where they're trying to do things to make things a lot more user-friendly. But there's a challenge because of the size and the amalgamation issue, and specifically, to the zoning and bylaws and building department, they've rewritten some of the documents and stuff. But some cities are more advanced in terms of accessing information, very easily, very user-friendly. Some are behind. I think it's just a matter of time when people kind of get things.
Are there places that you look to as a sort of model right now in terms of design?
Not really. I mean, first of all, we don't do that. We don't set up those type of systems and stuff like that. But there are, call it, cities that might be a bit more user-friendly in terms of doing business, in terms of accessing information. So it really depends on the the municipality and which department you're dealing with.
Yeah. From a corporate perspective, do you look at other companies and how they're approaching big data? Like, do you draw lessons from other places?
I mean, definitely we do. And if I could kind of go back to one of the questions that you asked before, I think when you talk about looking at digital infrastructure and you talk about being able to enhance that collaboration and crowdsourcing, open data is fantastic, but to be able to plan for that type of engagement is also really important. You hate to be in a situation where you've asked for help and then you can't take advantage of it. It's very hard to go back to a community and say, we kind of messed up. We asked for your opinion. We didn't do anything with it, but we really mean it this time.
Right.
We really want it, and we're going to do something with it this time. And so being able to plan for people kind of picking that up and running with it is also really, really important.
Yeah.
And that's true, I think, from the corporate perspective as well as from the city perspective.
So do you have divisions then, and will cities have divisions that are entirely dedicated to this, or is this like you ask the IT guys to, help you out with your strategy for open data?
I could tell you,
At Ford
being
has
kind of an IT guy, that probably the last thing you want to do is leave it always or only in the hands of the IT people. Mm-hmm. It really takes a team to be able to put this thing together.
Right.
I think it's very easy for people to get stuck on the IT perspective. We have to make sure we have enough servers and we've got good apps and people are interested in writing things, and not being able to make sure that you've got content that people are interested in, that you've got a story that they find engaging. Those are really the key pieces.
I think for cities and for organizations, it has to be a mindset change for the whole organization too, of understanding how this can benefit everyone, like from an HR perspective to an efficiency perspective to a competitive nature, that we have to sort of convince people why this is helpful, right? I'm going to open up to you guys. I can't really see, but I understand that there's mic set up somewhere. So I think we have a question up here. Yeah.
Do I need a mic?
If you yell it out and I'll repeat it.
There's a mic coming down.
Oh, is there? Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Deborah McCutcheon, and I'm an expert in microwave radiation from wireless devices. And when you ask the question, what are the downsides to the technology and the amount of connectedness, I would say one is energy consumption. We already know that 2% of the world's energy is being spent on wireless mesh networks. And the second is health. All of the wireless devices that we have in our homes, on our city streets, run in the microwave frequencies. They're the same as your microwave oven. They interfere with each other. They're very energy inefficient because their power density is logarithmic to source. So if you live near a cell tower, your potential for harm is much increased. We see this in Europe with a diminishment in property values around cell towers of 15%.
Do you have a question for the panel?
So my question is, given that we've heard that 50 billion devices are going to be connected using wireless technologies, and I'd like to know what we're going to do as a city, to make sure that the downsides we're already experiencing do not turn out to be an epidemic, which will certainly be a problem for the city in terms of health costs.
Anyone want to take that? Do people accept the premise of that?
What I would just like, of course, to comment on that question about RF radiation is definitely a serious question. In Canada, it is regulated, and both Health Canada and Industry Canada are cooperating with that. They set certain standards, and whoever is using these devices have to meet those standard requirements. So it's a valid question, and I think that our regulators are taking action and taking steps to make sure that a use of these technologies is appropriate.
Let me comment on the energy efficiency issue, because that is a big issue in terms of all of this infrastructure that's being built to support, the wireless, and digital age and all that kind of stuff. Well, a lot of infrastructure was actually built, or data centers, for example, were built, 30, 40 years ago, primarily a lot for the, the banking industries and other industries, and they were very energy inefficient. There's no question about that. Just like a lot of other buildings and things that were built. These days, obviously there's a very, very big push towards energy conservation for many reasons. In data centers specifically, a lot of it has to do with the fact that they are energy hogs. And because they are energy hogs and the cost of energy is obviously going up and up and up, the owners of these facilities are looking at ways of making them a lot more energy efficient. And definitely there's been a drastic change in terms of how they're designed, how they're built, how they're operated, that's making them a lot more energy efficient. Now, even going beyond that, the issue of the devices and the computers and the servers and all that kind of stuff, there are companies like IBM and HP who are really pushing the envelope in terms of next generation, circuit boards. And I'm not an engineer, by the way, but I've talked to these guys and been to different seminars and learned a lot about it in terms of, when you look at all this equipment that takes a lot of energy, and all this equipment consists of a lot of, transistors and resistors that are all connected with copper. Well, they're looking at technology to replace copper with water, right? And so, with water and also with fiber optics. So, transferring, electricity by means of fiber optics, which means you really reduce the amount of heat it generates, so therefore you don't have to cool it, the amount of power it uses, all that kind of stuff. So, next 10, 15, 20 years, the technology, I think, is going to move in a direction. It's going to really, increase the efficiency of these devices, of these buildings and all that kind of stuff, and have a real positive impact on what we're doing. But it's all part of that. But it's all part of the mobile network. It's all interconnected. So it's technology. It's all interconnected. It's not independent.
I think I saw somebody in the middle here.
Thank you. Robert, regulation of this industry. Who's going to do it? How's it going to be accomplished? How do we know that there aren't going to be abuses? And how do we know that the general public are going to be the benefactors of what is the information that's going to be there?
Which industry in particular?
Well, it could be any industry. If you're saying we're going to be accessing everything, or the availability. I mean, you have the cities. There's a tremendous amount. I think Toronto does a relatively good job of providing a lot of information on the internet. But I mean, that's only the tip of the iceberg. There's many more things involved. I'm just curious, who's going to regulate?
Can you regulate big data? How do those two ideas work together?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I think the regulations are definitely important, and whenever you're talking about a technology that has privacy and security implications, those are things where governments need to take a really strong perspective. I think from personal individuals, there's a value proposition. So many times people are willing to give up a piece of data about themselves to get a benefit back. So you want to sign up for one of those social coupon type sites. You're giving information. You're giving information if you just click on it to get more information also. So I think the future of looking at a lot of the big data technologies has to be making sure that the value proposition is open and upfront for all parties involved. And so that people can feel comfortable about giving up that piece of information without feeling like they're giving up something that they're not getting compensated for. The worst thing you can do is get to a spot where people feel that this is creepy.
Where it's being used against them. I
Right.
think that's the fear, right? Okay, it's fine if it's being used for my benefit, but if it's used to...
And I think partially that's also a control perspective. You know,
Yeah.
If I feel like I'm giving you something, I want to know, okay, I have control of that.
Yeah.
And not maybe that's a global perspective. You know, once I've given that up, I can never take it back. If
Right.
you've done something with that and I don't like it, I should be able to take that back and say, you can't use that information anymore.
It's such an interesting time, though, because the pace of innovation and the pace of discovery is going so much faster, I think, than our ability to regulate these things, right? So people are still learning, like, oh, okay, Skype is a wonderful thing, and then after you've used it for a year, you're like, okay, is everything I've said for the last year now belong to a company? I didn't realize that's happened. And so regulation is still catching up with email and internet, so how can it begin to contend with the next phase?
I would like to be very clear that with government data, it is regulated.
Yeah.
We are probably more closely monitored than any other than private industry when it comes to information and privacy and security. And for the city's open data program, every piece of data that is put out as open data is put through a process where it is looked at for any possible potential privacy breaches and security breaches. So it is always vetted, goes through a process, it goes through an approval process. As well, we work with other cities and provinces across Canada. As you may or may not know, the Government of Canada is coming up with a new open data license that speaks to how the data can be used.
So how does that work for you then? Do you find that not that that's not a good thing, but does it get in your way and does it slow you down too much that you have to do these things?
I think, as our city clerk would say, if it slows us down, it's because it has to slow us down. But so far, there's quite a bit of priority put to any data that's going out there, and it is carefully scrutinized quickly.
Yeah.
Can I just riff on the idea that you talked about before? The question had to do with big data and privacy and security. And I think a lot of times the focus right now is on the social technologies. And so I definitely think there's some concerns over there. But we talked a little bit earlier about the number of devices that are going to be generating data. And a lot of those things have benefits because they're health applications. There's glucose monitors that can be put into a wristwatch. That information real-time data can be sent to your physician. There can be real-time alerts if there's something that goes wrong with your blood sugar. That's big data technologies too.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of times people really focus on the things that are kind of, they sound a little bit scary.
Yeah.
But I think the fundamental technologies also have a lot of benefit to them.
Well, one of the original panelists today was going to be from the city of Boston, and I was looking forward to talking to him about emergency preparedness, because one of the stories I think that came out of the horrible incident there, the bombing of the marathon, was that they texted people, right, to do the take shelter order. Have you seen, can you guys talk about some other examples of where this is being used effectively for the sort of public good rather than creepiness?
I think it is very good that we got the question and your comment. Both the question and your question actually highlight that digital infrastructure is a strategic infrastructure of one country and of a municipality as well in the province. So from that perspective, it is important that it is secure, both physically and from intrusion perspective, that privacy is protected. And in Canada, we do have certain privacy acts that take control of that, like PIPEDA Act. When it comes to use of this technology for emergency purposes, if you talk to first responders and emergency centers, you will realize that most of the calls are actually coming from mobile devices, 911 calls. Also, there are many initiatives that involve early warning systems, broadcast messaging, emergency notifications, specifically actually started after a tsunami that happened around the Pacific, where actually the catastrophe happened people knew about it 2 hours before it actually hit certain areas, but people were not alarmed. So in the future, we are looking to use technology to prevent these types of situations and handle situations in the most efficient way when they actually happen because of high level of connectivity that it provides.
Yeah.
And just sort of a low-tech example of that as well is Honolulu has a tsunami warning system. Sirens go off. Well, believe it or not, they're battery operated, and they run down, and then they don't work. So what they have now is an app that they based on Boston's Adopt a Hydrant app. Only this one is Adopt a Siren app. And people in that neighborhood, they know where the sirens are. They sign on to check the batteries.
Oh, yeah.
And it's all through a mobile app.
Yeah.
Just as in Boston, they have fire hydrants, people sign on to clear them during snowstorms.
Really? That's nice.
It's all sorts of little stories
Yeah.
like that.
Do you think that there needs to be a sort of, because it's all different organizations, but do we need more education? Does there need to be a bit of a PR effort of this to sort of counter the idea, or to talk? Do we need to talk more about the negatives and the positives and how these things can be used? Because I think there is a lot of suspicion. People don't understand this, and they don't know how it's going to affect them. Do you feel like companies or cities need to take more of a role in the sort of advocacy or education element of this?
Well, absolutely. I think it is very important that the direction comes from executive levels, and that the digital strategy for a city or municipality or the province or the country is properly defined. What is it that we want to accomplish and why? So that direction is set, and based on that general direction, it's properly implemented and cascaded down to appropriate uses, appropriate openness of information, and implementation of that. Someone mentioned that people don't like seeing ugly telecom infrastructures. Well, if they are made ugly, that's the case. I met with one municipality in Canada who actually decided they are going actually to incorporate telecom space when they build a new building, so that actually some of these antennas are not going to be visible. They are going to be integrated in a building and make it more aesthetically pleasing. So there are lots of things that actually can be done when the direction and vision is properly set.
The CN Tower is the communications thing. Our firm designed it, actually.
Has anyone seen the movie Canadian Bacon? Do you remember? Never mind. Okay, any more questions? Yeah, right here. The mic needs to catch up with you. He's just coming. Behind you. Yeah.
Good afternoon. I'm Richard McFarlane. I've been with the City of Toronto for 25 years in the Records and Information Management program. So, Trish, you must know of that program.
Yes.
And the specific act that covers your discussions is a long-winded term. The Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. We call it MFIPA. And we have what is known as a CAP office, and any public requests go through that office. My question to the panel is, we see more and more with the digital age that our communications are being shortened and shortened and shortened. I used to look up in the city hardbound council minutes all of the discussions that led up to a resolution in council. Now, the City of Toronto, the amalgamated city, only gives you the resolution in council. It doesn't give you the background perspective that led to the decision. What I do is sit at council for up to 8 hours and transcribe that discussion that led up to that decision, so that my wider ratepayer community understands the basis of the decision. And this is important for historians of the future to understand our corporate history and what decisions were made. What are your thoughts about digitalizing and losing some of that access and information in detail as it has been historically?
We need more information than ever, but it's all in text message and emoticons. Do you find that's a problem? Do you find that the information that we are storing and we are able to rely on is not robust enough to actually serve?
It's a very big, it's a very good question, actually. There are multiple dimensions of that question. First one, yes, communication is getting shorter, and you better know how to communicate so it properly tweets in your Twitter message and in SMS message, so it has to be short. But with regards to records, the question is for the future, how are we going to store that information? Are we going to actually have a video recordings of some of these events? Are we going to store them in a paper copy? digital format, audio recordings? Are we going to store them physically, or are we going to store them in the cloud? How will it be used in the future are some of the quite big questions, and documenting our present for the future is a challenge that I don't think we have a clear answer yet, but we are getting definitely away from traditional ways of doing that.
If I could just say one thing, I mean, I remember years ago I've gone many times to the Committee of Adjustment, the City of Toronto. You go to the Committee of Adjustment, and I don't know if any of you have ever been there, but you stand up in front of a board of 5 or 6 people, and you present your case, and people argue and all that kind of stuff, and a couple of days later you get the meeting minutes from the Committee of Adjustment. And in the old days, called 10, 15 years ago, it would be 3 or 4 pages long. A lot of stuff that you said or other people said would be in there. Now, getting back to the gentleman's point, you get these meeting minutes that come out, and basically there's nothing really recorded other than the decision, right, that was made by the committee that you won or you lost. And I wonder if it's more about, not so much about, why isn't it being stored, or is it, too much to store, but is it more of a legal issue? Are they not recording this for legal reasons, the liability issues? I mean, again, I'm not a lawyer too. So I just wonder if some information that used to be, on hard copy that was manual recorded before, that is not being recorded now, if there's another reason for that, and has nothing to do with the digital age. I don't know.
This city has tried really, really hard to make it easier to follow council and committee. And there's a site on toronto.ca which attempts to make it easier. But there's an app for that. There are also a couple of endeavors right now. One's called Tabs on Toronto, and the other's called mycityhall.org. And they're trying to make it easy for you to follow a particular issue, and even to set it up so they'll notify you if you're interested in following something that's happening in your development in your area. And there are also other groups out there like Urban and Digital, and I think there's a few people here from that group today who want to marry up urban design and urban planning and public engagement. And we've been working with a number of people on that score as well. So, it does seem like it's layered and there's too much information, but the city and advocates out there are trying to make it easier to access.
But it's an interesting sort of situation for employers to deal with, because it's human resources too. As you're contending with more and more information, how do you use your people? How do you use your time? What has to go by the wayside? And so I just want to ask you, do you do that? Do you do the transcript because you want to? Like, are you not actually required to do that, but you go and do it out of your own?
Free of charge. I do it voluntarily. I make it to the wider ratepayer community, make it available.
And so if you left, that wouldn't happen anymore?
It wouldn't happen at all.
That's
I
really,
wouldn't have my 4 binders to transfer.
and that's the interesting thing is there's human choices at play here, right? Are there people who are going to make sure that this keeps happening, or are things like that going to be dropped? That's amazing. Yeah.
I'd like to continue on that point where I've noticed exactly that diminishing of information in an age where we've got excess access to information, where I think it's deliberately being reduced, certainly from a political standpoint. It seems to be more of a suppression of information, and also this whole notion of the Privacy Act or privacy information that is blocking information from being disseminated, whereas before it wasn't there. And I think what it does, the negative aspect of it is that, which I'll put to the panel, is I believe what we just heard in past member discussing about this sort of soundbite, or only a resolution rather than the whole background discussion, that sort of information is being deliberately eliminated, so nobody has any basis for knowing how these political decisions are made, even if it's at Committee of Adjustment, for example. And I know there's human resources and there's an overload of information, you have to sort of condense it somehow. But I believe in an age where we've got this access to information and very complex search engines, it should be plausible to have all of that information still available should people choose to search for it. But instead what we're seeing is a lot of it's just being eliminated. All you see is the resolution and the decision.
Having worked for both the media and the government, I would say never chalk up to conspiracy what could be explained by incompetence. But it is a thing, and the fact that there are these questions about trust, like it demonstrates that people worry about this. Why am I getting this information rather than this information? I think data mining it's going to be such an interesting industry in the future. I know with, if you guys have been following the gas plants situation at all, one of the things I found really interesting with the search for documents was that it's still people handing over documents. And so when you search for a term like Project Banana, for example, you get a lot of emails about people's shopping lists. And I think there is an emerging market for companies who are doing this sort of document recovery for companies, for governments, because people don't know how to do those searches effectively. And it's there, but are there the people there who know how to find it? I'm not sure about that. Anybody else? Next question?
Hi there. My name is Charles Finley. I work at the Mars Discovery District, and I'm also a member of a new group called Urban Digital Toronto, so as Trish mentioned. As I think the panel, you mostly, given your titles, you mostly work at the technology layer. But what we're kind of seeing is that if I'd asked you to put your futurist hats on, if we look at the fact that we're getting more data from more devices, and we're getting more data showing behaviors of politicians or policy decisions that are made, if we put all those things together and we have open access to that data that is then pushed out to devices that most citizens have in their pockets using tools that they commonly use, and we also have a whole technology community that's able to take that data and build applications around it. If we project out kind of some of the things we're looking at is, what does that actually contest or refactor the nature of the citizens' relationship with the government? Because if citizens can get more information about their neighborhoods and connect with one another, maybe they can actually work at the hyperlocal level to actually do things that we have been in the past asking our governments to kind of look at in a more abstract way. So in terms of when you're working with your clients, let's say, or where you're working in the government, are there those discussions taking place in terms of a changing nature of citizen engagement or relationship with government driven by these technologies?
Anybody want to field that one?
I think if we created the impression that the change about our digital cities is technological change, probably that was not very good, because the digital agenda, digital cities will change completely the way how we live, the way how we work, the way how we interact. And the change, as much as being technological, is actually going to have even more social impacts and cultural impacts, because the way how we communicate, how we relate to each other will be very different when we actually increase that level of connectivity. And I'm hoping it will be for better and more efficient, but definitely it will be different.
So I think a lot of the things that people are doing with open government and open data from cities can help a lot of the policy decisions that have been talked about today. Being able to say things like, well, we are thinking about putting an investment in. Can we build cases and build examples from things we've done in the past and actually apply some analytics and figure out these are the situations that seem to work best in the past. These will give us some hints for things that we want to try in the future. And I think a lot of the technologies, whether they be data mining or analytics, to be able to take large data sets and then condense them down so you can get insights from them, can help. And I think by taking things that are currently being looked at by a lot of the cities, releasing those data sets allows a lot of people to take a look at different technologies, and not just it's a requirement of the city, it's a requirement of the people in the city to use this data to make things better.
If I could just say one thing on a very kind of simple scale, in terms of an example, I mean, the technology and the the digital age that we're going into for a lot of cities, including, I believe, in the city of Toronto. Even access to the library system. Before the library was open from called 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock, Monday to Saturday. Now, going online, you have access to ordering books, having the stuff available to you to go pick up or being delivered depending upon where you live. And also, taking that even further to the barrier-free community. They have now, because of technology, because of the digital era, because of the city going digital, they have access to things that they never had access to before, like the library system. So it's definitely having a positive impact, and all this information being kind of combined and stored somewhere is giving different people, different groups access to information 24/7, 7 days a week, or to people that could never even get to that information, they can now access it from home, from their laptops, from their devices, or whatever. So it's definitely having a positive impact.
You can find out which LCBO store to go to before the strike. Snap for that too. Unfortunately, I think we're out of time. It was fascinating. Thank you all so much, and thank you for your questions. It was great to be here. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.